AuburnAbi. We're here to have a little chat today. I'm going to start with you, Abby. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Well, I live in the Midwest, born and raised. I guess that's kind of a big part of my life. Let's see, job-wise, I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 5.5 years. So I've been a nurse in several different parts of the country at this point. So I've kind of gotten a wide range of experience, which is nice. Let's see, I am a dog mom to my dog Ollie, who's actually not here right now, but she's normally running around in the background of my stream. I've been streaming for almost 2 years, but relatively infrequently. I was pretty solid there for a while and then had some personal stuff happen, so I kind of pieced off the internet for a while, but I came back earlier this year, so it's good to be back.
Absolutely. It's good to have you. So what led you to nursing? Like, what started that?
Well, so my mom is a nurse.
Okay.
And I just remember growing up and she was like, don't be a nurse. And I was like, okay. And at the time I was really interested in, I was in high school, like late middle school, early high school, and was interested in some other things, more creatively driven. And I ended up having a slot in one of my class schedules about my junior year of high school that I could do an internship. And so I decided that I was going to go do a nursing internship my junior year of high school. So I worked on a labor and delivery unit for a semester and pretty much was just the clerk in the hospital and like did all the paperwork stuff. But I just thought it was really interesting how nursing is really this kind of marriage between art and science. So you have to know a lot about the body and how it functions and how medications affect you and things like that. But then people always talk about like bedside manner. So being able to work with people, even if they're difficult, and just making them feel at home and safe. And you know, when they're in the hospital, it's one of the scariest times probably for them. You know, nobody likes to be sick and in the hospital. So I really liked my internship. So then my mom, who was like, don't be a nurse, she's done like everything in nursing. So in nursing, it's very normal to kind of jump. If you get kind of bored or burnt out in one spot, you can easily jump into something else. So she's done it all. And she's like, that's the great thing about nursing is it's all nursing. We can go do whatever you want. So kind of having the opportunities that presented was a really big draw for me. So I took a bunch of AP classes in high school, got into the honors college where I went to school, and finished my bachelor's in 3 years and was out the door. So I worked briefly in Michigan when I graduated. That's where I was in school, and then moved out to California. So I went to visit a friend of mine who had moved out there with her fiance and just fell in love with it and was like, if I'm going to up and move across the country, fresh out of college is the time to do it. So I packed what fit in my CRV and drove across the country with no job, no money, no housing. I mean, like, I was raised flying by the seat of my pants, but it all turned out okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed out in San Diego for about 2.5 years, worked there in hospital, and then wanted to come back home. Really missed all my family and my friends. So came back home to Ohio and now live like 5 minutes from my parents, which is a blessing and a curse sometimes. Mostly a blessing. I love them. We're super close, but you know, sometimes you just see too much of people, right? So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, so now I'm back here, and that's essentially how I got into nursing. So
the real Hodorate is now a guardian. Such beautiful peeps, less than 3, 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 such moisture.
Oh my gosh. I was like, should I disable subs? Nah. Okay. Hodor, thank you for coming in with the 18 months and all the hearts for Abby coming in there. Hope you enjoy our
I should have used
conversation.
my Presley mug. That was dumb.
Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah, come on guys. Support my stream.
I thought about it too, sitting in the cabin. I was like, nah, I'm gonna use my Stars Hollow Luke's mug from Gilmore Girls, but
Awesome.
man,
I like
missed
the reference.
opportunity for sure.
Well, welcome to the stream, Hodor. We're just chatting with Abby here about how she got into nursing. So what's nursing like in San Diego compared to where you are here? What was that
It's pretty different. I have primarily worked in a hospital, which is what we call acute care. Like a nursing home would be considered long-term care. So if I bring that up, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So in California, probably the biggest difference, two things. One is that California has a state law that requires nurse to patient ratios. So if you're a nurse on a unit in the hospital, the most you can have is about 4 to 5 patients. And at that point, if you fill up and you don't have enough staff, then they have to go somewhere else. Ohio does not have that law. So there are many places around here in Ohio where if you're in a hospital and you could be taking care of some very, very sick people, you could have 8 or 9 patients. Especially with what's going on in the world right now, hospitals are just getting completely slammed. So that was a little bit of a shock, just because when I first got out of school, I worked in an emergency room, so that was just chaotic all the time. And then I went to the hospital in San Diego and really got used to having like my 4 patients. It was like, these are my people, and if I have 4 patients, then I don't have to admit anyone from the ER. I could just cruise through my night.
Right.
But when I moved back to Ohio, the facility I worked at actually was pretty good about keeping ratios kind of where they needed to be. So the most I've ever had here in Ohio is probably 5 or 6. There are definitely some hospitals around here that you could just have a ton of patients, which is really dangerous. It's very stressful for patients and for nurses when you get up to those kind of numbers. The other big thing is pay. So in California, I mean, they're paying a huge amount more. The Midwest in general does not pay more for jobs, which is pretty standard because you're not in a big city and stuff. But I think part of that is just the culture in general. So
right. Okay.
Yeah.
And you talked about like different types of nursing. Like what are some examples of how you diversify with your job?
So as I mentioned, the first place I ever worked at was in an emergency room. So I was fresh out of nursing school. If you're in nursing school, 10 out of 10 would not recommend this. Just learn from my mistakes. Sorry. So I was basically looking for any job anywhere near where I graduated, and ended up working in this little like rinky-dink ER in rural Michigan. It had like 10 beds. So if you go to a big hospital, they've got like 50 beds. And we had 10. And so it was, it was very much feast or famine. And I worked night shift. So you'd either be slammed the whole night or you would not see a single person. So it was kind of wild. I think the hardest part about that is, especially fresh out of nursing school, you kind of have to know about everything. So because you could see anything while you're there.
True.
So that's probably the hardest part, and just being out of nursing school and having no idea what I was doing and being worried that I was like gonna accidentally kill somebody was a lot of stress. I mean, so that was pretty stressful. I'd only worked there for about 7 months before I moved to San Diego. So when I moved out there, I had a really hard time finding a job, which was surprising for me. Because there were so many job openings, but there were so many people that the job pool was like really overly saturated. So because I had 6 or 7 months of experience. I wasn't a new grad, but I didn't have like experience either. So I was kind of
Oh
in a
no.
tough spot there. So I actually worked in a warehouse for a while when I first got out there, to make ends meet, and then found a hospital that was doing a new graduate residency program. So if you had less than a year of experience, you could come in and they would do like you had an extra long orientation time, and then you did classes and things like that, which I wish every hospital would do that, honestly, for new grads, because otherwise you just get thrown to the wolves, and you're expected to take care of people and be responsible for their well-being, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, because everything you learn in nursing school is like really technical, and then you get into nursing, you're like, I don't know anything.
You're like, how do I actually do this at this point?
Exactly. So I finished the residency program there, and then worked there the entire time I was in California, for the rest of that time. And then that was considered an observation unit. So that's also kind of like another sect of excuse me, of acute care, is observation. So it's like you're a little too sick to just stay in the ER, but you're not quite sick enough to be like admitted to the hospital. So we had a lot of people who had like chest pain or like asthma attacks or COPD attacks and things like that. And basically they could only be there for 48 hours. So if you hit that 48-hour mark, you were either discharged or you were admitted.
Oh wow.
So it was really fast paced, but that was good for me. It kept me busy because I was working night shift, and I'm definitely not a night shift person. That was really difficult, and yeah, I just didn't adjust well to that. But and then when I first moved back here, I worked on a medical surge unit. So when you think of a hospital, it's usually a med surge unit, like just a whole variety of things. And then I currently work in a long-term care facility as a nursing manager. So kind of been a wide range of experience for my little 5.5 years in the nursing field.
That's a lot. That's pretty drastic across 5 years.
Yeah.
So what are the hours of work been like throughout your career? Like how long are you typically working at each of these jobs?
So most hospitals are moving towards 12-hour shifts.
Okay.
There are still some places that'll do 8-hour shifts, but for the most part, especially if the hospital is unionized, there's been a lot of studies where nurses just in general prefer 12-hour shifts. Your continuity of care, so just like making sure things stay consistent, is better with 12-hour shifts and things like that. However, there is a lot of evidence about certain like numbers of 12-hour shifts in a row, like by that third or fourth day, you're more likely to make mistakes. So I don't know, it's kind of a pros and cons, but pretty much everywhere I've worked has been 12-hour shift. When I worked in the ER, it was 12-hour night shifts. I would work 6 nights in a row, and I'd have 8 days off.
Okay.
Which was awful when I was working, because by the 5th night, I was like dead to the world, zombie mode, and just like chugging Mountain Dew to stay awake. And then you have 8 days off, which is fabulous because I could drive home to Ohio to visit my family.
Yeah.
Or just do nothing. But then like the first 2 days of that 8 days, I was like, oh my God, I can't move. And then you had a big enough stretch, so I'd try to flip back to day shift living so I could like be with my friends and whatever.
Oh no.
And then you have to flip back like the day before you go back to work. So it was just kind of a constant, I don't know, it just didn't work very well for me. And then the hard thing about the ER, like I was saying, it's kind of feast or famine. So I worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then towards the end of it, I worked 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., which I didn't particularly care for that shift, primarily because if it was one of those famine times, it'd be 9 o'clock and they'd be like, yeah, you can go home. So I'd like get off 2 hours early, which was sweet. Or if we were getting killed, I'd be there till 1 a.m. and then be back at 11 the next day. So it just kind of depended. Most other places I've worked have just been 12-hour shifts. The first hospital I worked at here in Ohio had a combination of 8s and 12s. So that was kind of a new thing. Most places consider 3 12s a week to be full-time.
Okay.
So it comes out to 72 hours a paycheck. And then the hospital I worked at here wanted your full 80 hours, man. So you were working 3 12s a week, and then you had to fit an additional 8-hour shift in somewhere in the pay period, which didn't seem that bad. And then when you have to throw it in there, you're like, God, the freaking 8-hour shift is like throwing off my jam over here. But I mean, it's been okay. And then I'm a manager right now, so I work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, basically. So that hasn't been too bad.
All right.
Yeah.
So what's management like compared to being down in all the... Can't even finish my question. Like what's the term? Like out in the field, yeah.
In the trenches, right?
Yes, in the trenches. Line. There we go.
So it's really been an adjustment for me. I spent the first 5 years of my career in the trenches, on the front line, constantly moving. And I have 2 master's degrees. I finished them and was like, I really want to get some management experience under my belt, even though that's not really what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because then I can go and do other things. So I took this position to get some management experience, and it's been interesting. So it's one of those things everyone's like, oh, dude, everyone hates middle management. It's true. I'm the go-between between the people on the front lines,
okay,
and then the upper management people, which is interesting. So I've gotten to do kind of some of everything, which has been good as far as a learning experience. I've done scheduling, I've done hiring, I've done discipline. We've been very short-staffed just because of COVID and things like that. So when I was still at work, I was basically getting pulled onto the floor every day. So when we're short, it was me on the floor. So right before I was out sick and started teleworking, I had been on the floor for basically a week straight, working 12s. So that's kind of the difficult part is there's a lot of things that I'm expected to do as a manager as far as all paperwork and audits and doing that kind of stuff. And so when I'm getting constantly pulled to the floor, which I don't mind because I love our residents and I like our staff and I don't want them, I've been that person who's worked short staff and it sucks and I don't want them to be in that position.
Yeah.
But then I get this pressure to like do all this other stuff and I'm like, I can't do both.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I can do this thing or that thing. So it's been an adjustment, but the regular schedule has been nice. I'm very grateful that they've been letting me telework from home for the last basically month. So that's been nice.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your time with COVID-19. How has that experience been over the past couple months?
It's been pretty crazy. So I've been fairly open about it on the internet. I am COVID-19 positive, so that's why I am at home at this point in time and basically haven't left my house in like a month.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. But before all that happened, things started kind of rolling in like probably middle to end of February is kind of when we started seeing people getting sick. And so we had an incident where we thought a resident had been exposed and we were like, nah, this is one of those things like, okay, people made a really big deal about like Ebola.
Yeah.
And then we had like 3 whole cases and then it was like over.
Oh, wow.
And just in the country in general. And so I think that's kind of, and myself included, I think that was my assumption of how this was going to go was like, okay, everyone's going to make this big freaking deal about it. And then it's not really going to be a big deal. And then all of a sudden our facility just got hammered with patients that had COVID-19, and we were one of the first in our county. So we were blasted in the media, which was fun and games.
Oh no.
And rather stressful. So then it was like every day there were new changes, and every day it was like, okay, well, first we had we were limiting visitors to like 1 visitor per resident per day.
Mm-hmm.
And then within 24 hours, it was no visitors. We're screening all the employees. Everyone's getting their temperature taken. You got to answer this questionnaire. I mean, it was like all of a sudden, it just went from nothing to like boom. And all of a sudden, our residents were all getting sick, which is just absolutely heartbreaking. Our employees were getting sick, even though we were going with what the standards of like protective equipment were at the time. So it started off, they just wanted like masks and gowns and gloves, which is what I was wearing when I was exposed, and I got sick anyway. So goes to show you, I mean, it's, you know, I'm thankfully a pretty healthy young person.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that has seemed to matter in some cases. that scares me a little bit, because I've seen things in the news about, oh, this healthy young 30-year-old person is hospitalized. And I was like, great. So so I started getting symptoms right after St. Patrick's Day. I'd been exposed, ended up being exposed to more than one patient. I just didn't know at the time that they were sick. So started with just like, oh, it's allergies, you know, like I've got a scratchy throat, my head is kind of full and whatever. And then all of a sudden, and we had gone to visit my brother and sister-in-law, so we took like, we were gonna do this big family vacation, like long weekend thing, and we canceled it. We said, we'll just go to my brother's house and we'll just like hang out there for 5 days and we'll just chill and still do whatever we want to do. And then like the day before we left, I spiked the fever, and I was like, well, crap.
Wow.
Because as soon as it happened, I was like, this is gonna be bad, isn't it?
Oh.
I texted my boss and was like, so I've got a fever. And she's like, yeah, so it turns out you were exposed. And I was like, great. So I got swabbed. And one of the universities had set up this huge like testing site, which honestly was actually pretty impressive. You stay in your car and you drive up, and they have people in like spacesuits who come up and ask you questions. And they say, okay, well, have you done this, this, and this? And if you're a healthcare worker, have you been exposed? And yada, yada. And so they said, yep, you're getting tested. So I got tested for the flu and for COVID. So they wanted to make sure I didn't have the flu, which came back negative. And then the COVID swab, if you've seen any videos of it on the internet, it really is that bad. It freaking sucks. It feels like they're trying to poke your brain, and I'm not a fan. So
not a fan.
Yeah. But it was very interesting because around that time, the tests were taking, so let's see, this was like a week after St. Patrick's Day, I think, was when I got tested. So it took them 8 days to get my results to me.
Yeah.
My mom and my boyfriend both got swabbed as well because they've been in contact with me, and they are both healthcare workers also. And so they got swabbed and they got their tests back in like 3 days. I was like, well, where the heck is my result? I was getting so mad. And then I talked to my boss, and she's like, well, the trend is if you're negative, they come back really fast. And if you're positive, it takes upwards of a week. And I was like, well, great.
Well, that's not a good sign. Yeah, no good news for Abby this month. No.
Yeah. So I finally got my results back. So I'd already been in quarantine for a week at that point. And then the Ohio Department of Health recommended that since I was positive, I remain quarantined for at least another 14 days or until symptoms alleviate. And then you have to be fever-free for 72 hours without medication. So I clearly have not made it to that point yet. I am still running pretty high fevers, and I'm going to get some more tests done today after this. So fingers crossed that I don't have something else going on.
Absolutely.
But it's been pretty up and down. I mean, people kept asking me questions, which I thought was kind of funny. So like people I haven't heard from and like ever, you know, are coming out of the woodwork. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know, is it worse than the flu? And I'm like, yeah, it's worse than the flu. Like I feel like garbage all the time.
Yeah.
And right now my Tylenol's in full swing, so I get these little spurts of energy when the Tylenol's in full swing, and then I'm like down for the rest of the day. So I just remember getting up and I like put some laundry in, and then like took the trash out and did like one other thing, and then when that Tylenol wore off, I was like, I can't get off the couch. Like I don't know, it's just so up and down. And then there'd be good days, and then the next day I feel like I've been hit by a truck. So it's very frustrating because I figured by this, I don't know, almost month point that things would be getting better. And it just, like, every day I'm like, it's got to get better, you know, it's got to improve. And then, like, since Saturday, my fevers have been the highest they've been. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. We're all just, like, shooting in the dark at this point. So,
absolutely.
Anyway. Very long explanation for that, but there you go.
So symptom-wise, what are you going through throughout this whole period? Like how high are these fevers and stuff like that?
So when I first started, like I said, I thought I had allergies because I was like, oh, it's, you know, it's allergy season. It's like March, and Ohio is the freaking worst for allergies if you live in the Midwest. So I'm basically allergic to outside. So like once spring happens, I'm like, you know, I was snotty and congested, and my head hurt, and I had a like scratchy throat. And then about the time the fever started, I started coughing. And so I was like, well, shoot. So, and about that time, the fevers were like 100.5, 100.6, which isn't like, it's doable. I could, you know, we drove home from my brother's house. We had masks, so I picked up my prescription to get swabbed. We had masks on, you know, we were taking precautions. I went and got swabbed on that Monday, and was still feeling like, okay. And then that second week was horrible. The coughing was just like more junky. It started kind of just dry, and then it got really junky. Like I said, my boyfriend's a nurse, so he was listening to my lungs, sure I'm not trying to brew some pneumonia or something. But I bought myself, if you go to a hospital, they have something called a pulse oximeter, and they stick it on your finger and it reads your oxygen level and your pulse. So I went to the CVS drive-thru and picked one up and was keeping a close eye on that. After a while, I started getting really short of breath, just getting up to do anything, like get up, go to the bathroom, short of breath. I started developing a lot of like chest tightness, which was really scary. And like every time my mom would come over, she's like, do you have red eyes? Because that was a thing she like read in the news, was like people would have these red eyes with COVID-19. And I was like, no, I don't think I have that. But I completely lost my sense of taste and smell for like a week.
Oh my gosh.
Which was honestly really miserable. Because I'm a big food person, and I was like, I didn't realize how badly it had like gone away until I was like, I'm really craving some popcorn. And so I made popcorn and I sat down, I took a couple bites and was like, I can't taste anything. I don't taste it at all. And I had this like the sense of smell all of a sudden, like we'd be cooking something, I can't smell it. I had this candle I got from a baby shower that was like ridiculously potent, and I lit it and I couldn't smell it, and it was so bizarre, and it was really depressing to just, I don't know. I was like, I can't even enjoy food. I just, you know, I had like no appetite anyway, and so when I felt up to eating, I couldn't taste it. I was like, it's not even worth it. So I think those were the main ones. thankfully that all kind of resolved. I did end up going to the ER at one point just because I was really short of breath. And they were like, well, everything looked okay. So they sent me home. But it was really scary because we got there. And of course, everything in the news is like, if you're going to go to the ER and you're positive, please call ahead.
Yeah.
And just being a nurse myself, like, I know that there's so much prep work that goes into preparing an isolation room, and they got to wear like the space suit, right? So they've got these huge masks that they wear that are like negative pressure masks that they use for like people that they suspect have tuberculosis and stuff like that. So it's just kind of scary to like know what it is.
Oh yeah.
And see it. So we pulled up, and they're like, okay, we have to go through this decontamination room, and no one can come with you. So I was like, well, where do I send my boyfriend? They're like, he has to go home. And I was like, okay. So, my mom is being a mom, and she's like freaking out. She was like, I'm so sorry you're there by yourself. And I was like feeling miserable.
Yeah.
And, I was sort of annoyed that like we went through all this trouble just for everything to be fine. But it was like, I'm very grateful that I did not have to stay. It needed to be done.
Absolutely.
And if I had had to be hospitalized, I wouldn't have seen any of my loved ones for who knows how long. And I think that's the most terrifying thing for people is their loved ones in the hospital. And normally you can go visit, or you can send flowers, or like whatever, and you can't do anything. So that person you care about is just sitting there by themselves. And that's where having really good healthcare workers comes in, is they're going to be that person for your loved one. So I think it was just very scary kind of knowing both sides. I'm not used to being the patient. So
oh yeah.
they always say healthcare workers are the worst patients. And I feel like I try to be really good when I behave myself when I'm there. But thankfully the nurse I had in that emergency room was wonderful, and was like trying to make me laugh, and like just trying to keep me calm and stuff like that. And he did a really good job. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad your condition has improved throughout that. That's good news.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you were asking about my fevers. So
yeah.
For the most part, things have resolved. The cough is mostly gone. I've still got some congestion, which I truly think might be allergies this time.
Yeah.
But I'm still running fever. So we're on day 24 of running a fever. Last night I was 102.8. This morning I am still running about 102. So I talked to my doctor, and I'm like, look, I know there's not really much you can do just based on a fever, but I really would like to get some more like lab work done and make sure I don't have something that is underlying developing, like walking pneumonia or something.
Yeah.
So that'll be after this, but hopefully good news for that. Yeah. It's been quite the battle, and I think probably the most frustrating thing is, most people are home right now, which is great, that their places of work are letting them work from home and things like that. I just keep looking around my house and being like, I really should vacuum, and I just can't.
No, absolutely.
And I can't leave my house. I can't do anything. And then there's a handful of people when I it's mostly kind of the older generation. So like my grandma, when I talk to her, she's like, oh, have you taken Ollie for a walk? I'm like, no, I can't leave my house. Like, I'm literally not allowed to leave.
Yeah.
Or my boyfriend's dad is like, oh, well, you sound good. And I was like, oh, okay. That's
all right.
good.
Yeah.
Like absolute garbage.
Guess I'm cured then. Yeah, we're good to go.
Yeah. Yep. And there's, of course, every couple days there's some new cure or preventative thing. So that's very frustrating from a healthcare standpoint and from a patient standpoint as well. But what are you gonna do? It's because people are concerned and they want to feel like they have control over the situation. and they want to help.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I'll just kind of shoot in the dark at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So what kind of things did you do or take throughout having COVID to sort of ease symptoms? And you mentioned putting the
The
blood
pulse ox.
oxidation thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing. So like, what else?
So predominantly Tylenol. Tylenol has been my BFF. For a while there, they were saying that ibuprofen supposedly made it worse. So I was only taking Tylenol. They ended up debunking that. So I've kind of added in some anti-inflammatory type medications like Tylenol, kind of like in between to help. NyQuil is my best friend at bedtime because I also am not sleeping very well, and I think it's just because I'm really like hot and sweaty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a lot of fun. I just recently started taking vitamin C, which I probably already have enough in my like multivitamin that I take every day, but it's not going to hurt me at this point.
Absolutely.
And then there's been a lot of talk about zinc as well. And at this point, my doctor's fine if I take those as an added supplement. So I guess that's the biggest thing is if you're sick and you're considering anything, just run it by your doctor. They're usually really chill about it and they know what's up. So, you know, don't let Dr. Google tell you what to do.
No.
Just saying. So, I mean, just vitamins and Tylenol for the most part. And really just kind of waiting it out. And I'm getting really stir crazy at this point because we're going on upwards of a month. I've been staring at the same walls in my house. So I'm sure everyone is feeling the same way I am.
Sure. So what have you done to stay entertained? What has kept you sane throughout all this?
Probably honestly the biggest thing has been Twitch. I had just like working in general. I'd kind of, you know, I had a bunch of personal stuff last year, so I'd kind of been away from Twitch for a long time. And so this was a like prime opportunity because as soon as I see someone's live or I'm bored out of my gourd, I'll just turn on Twitch and I can have people up there. The other biggest thing, which it should come to no surprise, is Animal Crossing has been awesome.
Absolutely.
So to have a game that's so like chill and cozy and just kind of melts time has been a really good thing. I have had some time to read, so I've been reading a little bit. I had one of my dad's friends brought me a care package and she like dropped it off on my porch. And I've literally met this person probably like a handful of times and she's just the sweetest. And so she brought this care package and there's like a coloring book in it and colored pencils. So I've been doing some coloring.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Like that.
I've been doing a lot of either phone calls with friends or video calls, which I think everyone and their brother has been doing Zoom recently. So we actually spent a day doing our D&D over like a Google Meet call.
Oh, that's cool.
Was semi-chaotic. Just because it's hard to hear when you have that many people all on the same screen. And I'm taking a bunch of Tylenol, so I'm not drinking much alcohol because they both get processed through your liver, and I'm trying to not absolutely kill my liver. So I might have like a drink if I feel up to it. But some of our friends were like plastered,
and you're just.
I'm just like, woo. It's not fun when they're not on the same level as you. So it was really difficult trying to get everyone to focus and kind of like, okay, guys, we still got to get through this. But we ended up being on the call for like 11 hours or something insane.
Oh my gosh.
It was a long time, but it was really fun. And we've been just talking to all kinds of friends and family, which has been really nice.
That's good. So what are some good things that have come of all this recent stuff?
I think the biggest thing for me is, if anyone knows the 5 love languages, my love language is quality time. And so I love stuff like this, just like sitting and talking with people.
Oh, yeah.
Even if we're not necessarily in the same room. So I have heard more from like a handful of my friends that I haven't heard from in a long time. It's maybe it's kind of selfish, but like being sick, people are constantly checking on me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hey.
It's a good reason to check in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need those reasons. It's weird.
I've gotten I feel like I've gotten much closer with like my brother. We've always been close. It's just the two of us, and he's working full time now, and his wife is in grad school, so they're really busy. But because everything's been shut down, he's teleworking, and she's doing schoolwork from home. So he'll just like call me randomly in the middle of the day, and so for the last couple weeks, I've heard from him almost like every other day, which has been really nice. We have started playing games online together, which we've done in the past, but it was like when we were younger and we all lived in the same house. And we're playing the same game. We're playing Guild Wars, the original, not the Trash 2 version.
Whoa!
Don't talk to me about Guild Wars 2. But yeah, we still have the original Guild Wars, and I mean, God, that game came out in like 2005 probably.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's old, and considering it's like that old of a game, it still runs really, really well. And I'm amazed by how many people are still like on there playing.
Yeah.
So, my boyfriend and my brother and I all started like brand new characters and started a campaign. So like once or twice a week, the three of us will get on, and I tried to get them on Discord. And my brother just couldn't figure it out, which is kind of funny because he's really like tech savvy. But meh. So we just put him on speakerphone on my phone, and we play Guild Wars for a couple hours. So that's been really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Some good has come out of all that. That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good relationship to have with family like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so where do you go after this? You're gonna be tested later, and at some point you have to pass a certain amount of tests before you can go back to work. How's that going? That kind of thing.
It's been really frustrating.
Sure.
So I got my positive result, and so as soon as that happened, we had the 14-day quarantine. When I first tested positive, I had been talking to my boss. They very graciously have been letting me do some teleworking and doing like audits and things like that I can do from home, which has been nice. So I've been trying to just like check in with them and keep a log of all the things I'm doing and stuff like that. So it was very interesting to hear because we did have some other employees that went and got tested as well. And she was telling me that some of these people were already back to work. And I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah. So you got it bad then.
Yeah, so that was my overall kind of impression, was that they talk about how there's kind of like multiple strains. And I think one of the people I was exposed to was really bad. And then on top of that, there's been a lot of talk about viral load, is what they call it. So healthcare workers, for example, are constantly in contact with sick patients. So if they do get sick, your body's just being beaten down by like constantly being exposed.
Okay.
Whereas if you were exposed like at the grocery per se and you got it, you may not be as sick. Now that's not necessarily true for everybody, but generally.
Yeah. to
since I had been exposed to multiple patients, as it turns out, I think I just got it bad, man. So I mean, they just kept changing the rules on like when you were allowed to go back to work. So really the biggest factor is they don't want you to go back to work until you've been fever-free for 3 days without medication. So no Tylenol, no ibuprofen, anything like that. Which I definitely have not fallen in that category. So I had been in contact with my doctor and with the Ohio Department of Health and basically said, well, what do you want me to do? Because I'm kind of not being like pressured from work, but kind of that like, well, these other people came back to work. And I was like, I'm still running a fever at that point of like 101.3 or something. And I was like, that doesn't seem safe. And there have actually been some studies, some small studies done with COVID positive patients, where even once your symptoms alleviate, so you no longer have the fever or coughing or whatever, some of those people were still what they call shedding. So like still contagious, still shedding the virus for 8 to 14 days after their symptoms were alleviated. So theoretically, right? So theoretically, even if my fever goes away, I could potentially still be contagious for like 7 days. And so it's just a long time to not be at work. And thankfully, they've been really, really lax on, it's not like I'm sitting here or sitting on a beach somewhere just not at work. I'm home and I'm sick. But they've been really good about working with me as far as that goes. So I've just been trying to keep them updated on how my symptoms are doing and is there anything you want me to do? Like, I'm at home playing Animal Crossing. Yeah, don't tell them that, but just like
you gotta do something though.
I know. So I usually so we'll see. I don't know. Every week I'm like, this is the week, man. The fever's gonna break, and then I'm gonna have to like go back to work. And now I've been away from work for so long. There was one period of time where I took actual vacation for like a month, and when I was scheduled to go back to work, I got really, really anxious because I'm like, I'm gonna forget everything. I forgot how to be a nurse. Like I just, so, I'm kind of getting to that point where like I've been out of work for so long that I'm almost nervous to go back, but like I don't want to be sick anymore either. So
for sure.
So we'll see. Thankfully, they've been letting me telework. My boss has been really cool about it. She's like, just let me know what you're doing. She's like, if you don't feel good, don't do anything. It's fine. Like, so we'll see. But
okay,
it's been interesting.
So we have a question in chat. Do you have to test negative? Are they going to actually do like a test, or are they waiting for all the symptoms to go away first?
First of all, it feels so official. Like, can we get some questions from the audience? Like, my current impression is no, that they will not test me again. As long as there's like certain criteria if you're not going to be tested. So you have to be the fever-free. You have to be at least 7 days past your initial start symptoms, which we're way past that. And all of your other symptoms like coughing and stuff have to be improved. So it's just specific enough for facilities to kind of say, well, as long as your fever is below 100.4, you can come back and wear a mask. So, it's specific, but it's not. So, if you go and get swabbed and you're negative, you can obviously go back to work. But I honestly have no idea how long it will in my system at this point. Like, we're almost a month in. I'm still running fevers. Thankfully, my doctor's been really cool about like, he just has to keep like extending my work note. He's like, yeah, we're just gonna slap a new date on it because I mean, like, what do you do? So my current understanding is no, and it's probably the safest way. Obviously, would be to retest me and have me be negative. However, my understanding is there's not enough swabs to be doing that frequently with a lot of people. So they're trying to reserve all those swabs for testing to see if you're positive in the first place.
Right. Okay. So we've heard things in the news about the whole antibody test, that eventually at some point your body develops these antibodies to fight the virus, and then that's how we would know that you had it. Even if you didn't know you had it, you would have the antibodies and they would test for that. Have you heard anything about that?
Not too much, but I mean, it makes sense. So it's exactly like, so you get vaccines when you're a kid for like measles and mumps. Generally, most people get vaccines unless you elect not to. Measles and mumps. The other big one that comes to mind is like hepatitis B. So typically what they do for hepatitis B is you get the shot and then they do a blood draw. And so they check your blood to see if your body has accepted the antibody for Hep B, and if you don't, you get a booster. So, like, my body must just be super weird, for example, because every time I've ever been tested to see if I have the antibodies for Hep B, I never have them, and I've got like multiple boosters. It just must not stay in my system for that long. So, it's not uncommon. It's not like dangerous or anything, but they're just like, all right, extra shot for you. And I'm like, great. Thanks.
Love needles.
So I assumed that eventually they would develop a test that would be similar to that. So, I mean, that would be, for the most part, I think that would probably be a lot faster and a lot simpler for people to do, is just go get your blood drawn, and then the lab does their thing, spin in the tubes and whatever else they do. I don't know. I haven't worked in the lab, so I imagine that's how it goes. But but it would certainly be a lot easier. I know some people don't like needles, so at that point it's like, do you get your brain poked or do you get your blood drawn?
I go with the needle. I don't like needles, honestly, but I go with it.
So, I mean, I have pretty good veins, so heck yeah, just take my freaking blood, because I don't want you poking my brain out anymore. It's just awful.
Yikes. Anything else you want to talk about with COVID? Any of that stuff?
Not that I can think of. Cool. We talked about that quite a bit.
We can move on. Absolutely. Bigger and brighter things.
Yeah.
So what brought you into like gaming and streaming and stuff like that? Talk about that.
So I've always been rather enthralled with video games, and not even necessarily like playing them. Like I liked playing video games, but I always enjoyed watching people play video games. I just remember growing up and people being like, that's weird. I was like, oh, okay. So I just kind of like kept it to myself and was just like, oh yeah, I like video games, as a like blanket statement. And then I just like, I played The Sims when growing up. I had a neighbor, and his older brother would babysit us in the summer, like when my parents were at work, and we would play the original Sims, and we would like take turns like playing it, and then the other person would sit there and watch, because we'd just be like managing the same Sims. So The Sims was a big part of my life growing up. The original Animal Crossing on the GameCube was like a huge thing for me growing up. I've always been much more into those kind of like quiet games. I was telling somebody about this the other day. I love the idea of like, in fact, I think it was Marcus. He was playing God of War. And I think God of War is a beautiful game. Like aesthetically, the storyline's really interesting. And anything where there's a boss battle, I kind of just panic.
Yeah. It's a lot. Those are really stressful. A lot of yelling.
And I remember playing Modern Warfare 2 with my brother, and he would of course be really good at it, and I'd be running around like, okay, I don't see him, and then I'd see him and I'd start shooting and I just scream, and my dad's like, can you stop?
But I'm dead.
I'm dead again. Shocker there. But I always enjoyed watching people play video games. So my brother would play through like Zelda, Ocarina of Time. He would play through that like once a year, and I would just sit there and watch him play it, even though I had seen it like 1,000 times before. I just sit there and watch him.
Yeah.
It was sort of interesting then when I got into like high school, like dating people. Guys were like, oh my gosh, you want to sit here and watch me play video games? You were the coolest girlfriend ever. I was like, I know. So
she doesn't want to play. This is so great. I get to play. She watches.
Exactly.
Score.
So I've watched playthroughs of like so many games. When I got in college, I watched the guy I was dating at the time played Assassin's Creed, and I mean, that's like all we did all weekend was like, he would play Assassin's Creed and I'd sit in the corner and eat junk food, and that was like my weekend. So I guess that's kind of like the origins of how I got into Twitch in general. I always loved the concept of watching people play video games. And so the actual getting into Twitch, I have religiously watched Jenna Marbles for like 10 years. Like, I mean, a long time. I've seen just about every video she's ever posted. Yeah, I'm a diehard fan. So she They started streaming on Twitch probably like 4 years ago or something like that. It's been a while. So they were streaming on Twitch, and I was just like watching YouTube at the time, and I just remember them talking about this Twitch and like, oh, we stream video games. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. Like,
yeah.
Cool. So I got on Twitch one day and found their channel, and they weren't live because they live out in California and are 3 hours behind me. So they always stream really late. So I'm bopping around on Twitch and was like, oh, well, I'll just put some games in here that I know I like. So I like Skyrim and I like The Sims, and actually found Baggers on Skyrim. He was playing Skyrim at the time. And just was immediately welcomed by all of these people in this chat. And I was like, I don't understand this like friendship that just happened. And that was the strangest thing, was like, all of a sudden he'd raid somebody, and then I'd find somebody else. So like, that's how I found Nega Oryx. And that's how I found most of these people that I watch stream on Twitch. And it was so funny when I first started watching it, because again, I got the like, you just watching people play video games, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's like, and you give them money? What is this? What's the scam here? For these stupid little emotes,
I know, what the hell? Yeah. So I'm sorry. I don't know if we should really be swearing on the stream or not. I've been pretty good up to this point.
Me too.
I try to be good. I try
trying.
to behave myself. So I found several people through there. So I became a regular in Nega's channel, and just found like so many other people that originally I had been like chatting with. A lot of those people, like you and Marcus and Seven Lovely Days. I haven't seen her around for a while, but I think she's been cut out doing her own thing. It's Only Jill. Like all these people that I started just like chatting with, all of a sudden start streaming.
Oh yeah.
And I just remember sitting there. I'd have like somebody on my TV on the app, and then I'd have my laptop, and I'd had like 4 tabs open because I didn't want to miss anybody's stream. And so I'd like bounce between them all. I was a little obsessed, but you know, it's fine. So eventually I was like, you know what? That'd be super fun to do. And I was like, I've got all these friends. And I think that was the weirdest concept for like my family. They were like, so you just like talk to these people? And I'm like, yeah. You know, I think for like my parents, they're like, you know, from that era of like, you meet creepy people in a chat room on like AOL Messenger and, you know, like that sort of thing. And I'm like, no, I'm like, I really feel like I'm very close to these people that I've like never met on the internet. And they're always just like super happy to see you, and like you kind of know like to an extent what's going on in people's lives and like that sort of thing. So anyway, I was like, well, I'm gonna start streaming because I want to. Now I am a very much an all or nothing person, so if I'm gonna do something, we are going full blown all the way, none of this half stuff. Like we're going the full 9 yards. So when I started streaming, I was like, we're getting a nice like overlay, and I'm gonna figure out. And I wouldn't say I'm like technically challenged, but it's not something that comes naturally for me. So figuring out how to get the setup all done and like make it work in general was really hard. And I just remember being so proud of myself because I figured out how to get it all set up without anybody's help. And so I remember like getting ready to stream, and then I was panicked. I was like, oh man, what am I gonna stream? Like, what game am I gonna play that people actually like want to watch? Yeah. And I'm sure the first thing I streamed was probably The Sims, but I did play a little bit of Skyrim. For a while there, we predominantly played The Sims, I think, for a long time. But I like a lot of like choice-based games, so we played through Borderlands 2, which was really fun, and we played through A Wolf Among Us, which was really fun. Yeah. And started kind of doing some of those other games, and then I'd get really gung-ho and I want to play like some first-person shooter, and then I panic, and then I'm trying not to scream on camera, and
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it's just a mess. But I'm super thankful to be back into streaming in general. I kind of came back at like the end of February, and because I'm home and literally can't leave my house, this is a perfect opportunity to be streaming and on the internet in general, which has been super nice. So, and especially since everyone's really into Animal Crossing right now, and I'm like, that is 100% a kind of game that I don't have to worry about screaming about because there's no boss battles.
Yeah.
So I do have some other things lined up that I would like to eventually play, but I think while Animal Crossing is like really big, I'm just gonna take advantage of that for
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta take advantage of, and that's what drew me in, was the whole community aspect of the game. There's literally always people hounding me. They're like, "Do you need some apples? Hey, I got some cherries on my island. Do you want me to bring some over? Hang on, I just got a record player. Do you want me to mail this to you?"
Yeah.
And it's like, people are just always wanting to help each other and visit each other and just do little things and meme around on each other's islands and stuff like that. And you're always customizing and showing off your island, your creations. So
yes.
And it's like all the good parts of life and like none of the bad, except for spiders and, getting bit by a wasp and stuff, things like that.
I love Blathers. Every time you give him a bug, he's like, eek!
Yeah, I love it.
A wretched thing.
And like, I thought the characters were going to be annoying, but they're not. They're so cute.
Super cute.
And I love them.
Yeah, they're super, super wholesome. I knew as soon as they were like, this Animal Crossing game's coming out, I was like, I have to have it. And I didn't have a Switch. So we actually purchased a Switch for my boyfriend probably back in like January because he wanted to play Breath of the Wild. And I was like, well, there's other stuff we can play on the Switch. So then they talked about Animal Crossing, and I was like, I'm getting my own Switch because if you're going to be on here playing Breath of the Wild, I do not want to wait for you to like get on and do my stuff for Animal Crossing. And I'm sure that sounds really bougie, but
No.
Such is life. So I got my hands on a bundle, and that was like a super scary thing. I was like surfing the internet, trying to find some place that actually was selling them.
Yeah.
And I thought I got swindled, but it was fine. And it showed up the day before I went into quarantine. So it was super, super nice. And I immediately set it up. And like a half an hour in the game, my boyfriend's like, I have to play this. And he's not into these kind of games at all. I mean, he's very much like Skyrim, or he'll play Witcher, or like Breath of the Wild and stuff like that. And he was like, I have to play this game.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I said, well, we can have 2 villagers on the same island, and he's like, no, I've downloaded it on my Switch. So I was like, hey, man, you go for it.
Yeah.
I felt like so proud of my island, and then I'd see people stream, and I was like, oh my god, look at their island. It's so like put together.
Like, we got a couple huts here and like a dirt path, and they got like city streets and power lines and lights, and it was like, here's the lighthouse, here's the satellite dish, the solar panels are over there.
Right.
The orchid garden is over here. Like, what?
A weekend they're like terraforming, and I was like,
yeah, I'm like, I just got the shop. I'm barely.
Yeah. They're like, oh, well, once you beat the game, you get terraforming. I was like, we have had this game for like a week.
Yeah.
And you guys are terraforming. Like, you're clearly playing more than I am, and I'm literally like most of the time.
Absolutely. Yikes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time to put into that game. But I like it, and I'm addicted. I have to get on every day to check in. Like, I got to make sure everything's going good. See what everyone's selling and make sure I get all my supplies for the day, because you can only do so much in a day, I guess, which is the other thing I like. It keeps me from overplaying Destiny and Division. They don't stop me from...
Don't talk to me about Destiny.
They don't stop me from overplaying. They don't. It's just there's always something to do, and so okay, yeah.
There we go.
Focus.
We're back.
They don't stop you, but like Animal Crossing, it's like, okay, eventually you're not gonna get double miles for doing, continuous mile stuff. It's like yeah, you
Right.
could catch fish all day and all night, but you're just gonna break all your fishing rods and
Yeah.
deplete your supplies. So it's like there's only so much you should really try to do at some point. So
Right.
it's like there is a certain cutoff time, which I think is good for
Yeah.
me. Keeps me
I
from
think it's
burning out.
good for most people, really, because
Yeah.
exactly, like I could sit here and any game that's not true to like actual time, you can just blow through. Like The
Mhm.
Sims, for example, I can literally speed it up ×3 and get the heck through like an entire day, and all of a
Yes.
sudden, wham, bam, my Sim's married and pregnant. Like it just, you can power through that kind of stuff all in one day, and I think that's really an interesting concept for Animal Crossing is that it's true to actual time. And I know that it's irritating for people when they're like crafting to, I can only make one medicine at a time. And
Yeah.
well, that's
Ugh.
kind of true though, right? So like I can only make this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to sit there and take the time to do it, by all means, please go ahead. But you get in and you do your dailies, right? Or
Yeah.
like, gotta get in and do my dailies. And so I get in and I get my resources and I talk to everybody except for Becky. I want that girl to leave my island so bad.
Oh, Becky. Get out.
Becky's out. And, do kind of those things. And it gets to a point where I'm like, well, I'm kind of good. I'll just save and do something else. Watch someone else freaking play Animal Crossing on Twitch, right? Like,
Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been. There couldn't have been a better time for that game to come out,
I agree.
and I don't think they knew. Hopefully, hopefully not.
Conspiracy theory time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Nintendo did this all to us that we could play Animal Crossing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. If chat has any questions for us, feel free to throw some questions in there. But we were just kind of talking about Abby's life, her career as a nurse, gaming and streaming and stuff like that. Anything else you want to talk about?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean,
Yeah. We went through a lot of stuff really quickly, I feel.
we did. Yeah. All of a sudden, I'm looking up because my clock is like right there. I'm like, holy crap, we've been talking for like an hour and 15 minutes already.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
crazy.
Well, I guess we could probably wrap up if you guys want. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for agreeing to chat with us. It's good catching up.
Having me.
I'm glad we
Yeah,
could
for
share your story, both your life, your career, your experience with COVID, your experience gaming and streaming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
I think it's been a really incredible chat. We'd love to have you on anytime. Let us know when you're going to be live next. Do you have any idea?
I'm hoping for Thursday, as long as I don't have to go do a bunch more tests, depending on how everything goes today. I'm shooting for Thursday at this point, since I have to go do that this afternoon. So that is the game plan.
Okay. And where can people find you? Where are you all at?
I am at AuburnAbi, basically on all socials. So you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, on Twitch as AuburnAbi. Sometimes I wear a wig, so I'm not always a redhead, but I am getting the itch to do something with my hair, and I'm stuck here in quarantine. So you know
Absolutely.
what? But yeah, you can find me at AuburnAbi. I'm clearly stuck at home and on the internet most of the time, so I'm fairly accessible if you ever want to chat or hang out.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Abby, for being here. That's us. We're going to log out, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.